Thank you for coming. And like I asked before, I'd like to ask one more time. So who's here for extra credit? Okay. Who's here because they want to? And you guys are here because you have to. I get that. Well, thank you for coming. And I think what you'll find, maybe not, but I think more than likely, you'll find that the topic within cyber forensics or digital forensics is a very timely, very interesting topic. Not because I think so, because it really truly is, given the scope and the landscape of what's happening in cybersecurity, which you hear about every single day. So let's break some misconceptions to start off with. So how many of you think that computer science majors do certain things? So this is what friends think I do. This is what my mom thinks I do. This is what my dad thinks I do. This is what society thinks I do, which is the matrix. What I think I do, in reality, what I do is break computers all the time. That's pretty much what we do in computer science, is we find ways to break computers in order to improve them. That's kind of the underlying thing. When you're talking about information security, and you'll notice I have a couple of memes on there. Hopefully you'll smile. If you're not smiling, then you're weird. I'm not weird. But information security is part of the sub-discipline of what I'm talking about as well. What my parents think I do is that I'm a hacker. What users think I do, what society thinks I do, what my boss thinks I do, what IT managers think I do, what I actually do is sit in lab and play with things all day. Here's another one. What my friends think I do, what my mom thinks I do, what society thinks I do, what my boss thinks I do, what I think I do, and what I actually do is what the cat's doing. You will find that there's some sort of a correlation between eclectic people and cats. Security analyst, what my friends think I do, what my mom thinks I do, what society thinks I do is print money, of course. What my boss thinks I do, what I think do, I think of myself as a ninja. You can see I'm not a ninja. What I actually do is play with servers all day. Now, here's why I put this in there, because we're talking about computer science, we're talking about information security, and now we're talking about forensic science. Because all these three things is what I have to do. It's not just one thing that I have to do. I have to understand computer science, I have to understand information security, and I also have to understand forensic science. What my friends think I do, what my mom thinks I do, what society thinks I do, what criminals think I do, what I think I do, what I really do is document and write reports quite a bit, which is a lot more boring than what you see in CSI. How many of you watch CSI? How many of you like CSI? How many of you think CSI is real? Nobody put their hand up. That's interesting. So let's talk about some quick facts. The USA is ranked number 3 in the number of mobile users worldwide. These are the number of mobile phones, and that's the population. As you can see, the number of phones is larger than the population.
Hey, I've got 2.
There you go. People have 2, 3. Does anyone have more than one phone? No? You do? One for one girlfriend and separate your life. Is that how it works? USA is ranked number 2 in the number of internet users. Who do you think number 1 is? China. 90% of American adults have a cell phone. 58% of American adults have a smartphone. 32% of American adults own an e-reader. 42% of American adults own a tablet. The penetration of technology is ridiculous. Think about that for a second. Think about what you do with your phone every single day. Why are you smiling? Stop Snapchatting. Is that what you're doing? You're Snapchatting. No? Okay. But you did at some point, right? Okay. Looking at some reports, and this is a report from Verizon, in terms of data breach investigations, you can see there are multiple sectors that are affected when it comes to cybersecurity. It's not just one sector. It's not like they just attack education. What really I find interesting is many of these reports don't touch on how much education is affected. You see our website going down every once in a while, right? I wonder why. Does anyone know why? No, we don't know why. Like, we're isolated from the reasons why our website goes down.
They keep telling us they have to do updates.
Could be a security update.
Oh, of course.
Public sector, energy, utility, healthcare, travel. All of the sectors that you can think about are actually affected when it comes to information security. Here's some more quick facts. And this is from 2013, so you'd expect things to change by 2014 and 2015. 6.5 million malware created in the first quarter of 2013. If you don't know what malware is, it's malicious software. Bad software.
Does that mean different malware?
Yes. 1 out of 5 online adults has been a victim of social/mobile crime. 1.5 million cybercrime victims per day in 2013. 67.6% global spam rate, with the highest being sex/dating spam. Think about that for a second. The list goes on. I don't want to bore you with stats. I just want to possibly shock you, or maybe not. Maybe you don't care. You should, though. Here's a new survey by PricewaterhouseCoopers, 2014. Banking and finance, government, healthcare, information telecom, big one right now, insurance, right? Before the whole Anthem deal, we didn't really talk about insurance companies being affected. But in reality, they were being affected, but we just didn't really talk about it. But now there's something big that happened, boom, the media takes it, and now we're talking about it all of a sudden. And the question is, are we safe? Well, we did a small study where we tested about 19 applications that are used by most of us, youngsters. I consider myself young. Stop laughing. And we found that a lot of them are not secure, meaning that the data can be leaked very easily from the applications, and it could be intercepted very easily from these applications. And I don't know if you saw, but we put the videos on YouTube. They went viral. Media caught onto it, but before we did that, we actually contacted all the companies. We informed them that there are security vulnerabilities with their apps. Do you think they responded? They didn't respond. Then we went public with it. Then they responded. 1 week later, a lot of them were patched. But I'm going to show you a quick video of one of the videos from that.
Hi, I'm a member of the University of New Haven's Cyber Forensics Research and Education Group, and throughout 5 videos we'll be showcasing security issues in over a dozen Android apps. The goal of this research is to inform both the user and the developer of these issues. This is day 1 of 5. Today we'll be looking at security issues in Instagram, OkCupid, and Ubu. For the network analysis, we created a test network using Windows 7's virtual mini-port adapter.
So if you pay attention to me, what we did was we created a wireless network on the computer. We connected our phone to it, and then we started testing the applications to see if we can intercept any of the data that's being sent from and to the phone.
So we created our test network, had our Android device connect to the test network, started up Network Miner, had the Android device send a picture in Instagram Direct. And once that picture was sent, it was picked up in Network Miner. Next, we'll have the iOS device send a picture to the Android device. And once that picture was viewed, it was picked up in Network Miner as well. We recorded network traffic in Wireshark to see if files remained on the server. For Instagram, we found an image that we sent weeks ago still on their server, unencrypted and without authentication. Next, we opened up OkCupid and went to the Keywords tab in Network Miner. We set a keyword as Uncle Tito, and once the device sent the phrase Uncle Tito, it was picked up over HTTP.
And in the context tab, we could see what was sent and who it was sent to.
So next we opened up Uvu and had the Android device send the key phrase Sparkle Horse, and once it was sent, it was picked up a network miner. Next we had the...
You get the point. The point is, you're using these applications every single day to send things that are personal, that are private. And that you have the impression or the perception that some of these things are secure. As long as you're connected to a Wi-Fi network in a coffee shop, someone that knows just a little bit, which we call a script kiddie, someone that doesn't have to know a lot about technology, can just use existing tools just like we did, sniff the network, boom, capture everything that you're sending back and forth, if there's no encryption in place. So after we did this and we released it, and by the way, the amount of people that the vulnerabilities we found affect about 1 billion users. So you can imagine 1 billion users can be affected because of this stuff. That's not something, that's not a small thing. It's actually quite a big thing. Now, what I do in most of my career, and what my students help me do, and what they do as well, is we focus on the investigative aspect. There's a protection aspect, of course, but we focus on if an incident does occur, what do you do? How do you stop it from happening if you learn what happened in the first place? But in forensics, that's typically what happens, right? Something happens, then you start investigating. But the process of how you investigate, the techniques, the tools, are built on computer science foundations. And not to mention you have to have investigative skills. But in forensic sciences, across the board, it doesn't matter what forensic science you talk about, whether it's chemistry or whether it's digital. There's two things that make forensics forensics. And if they're not there, then you're not doing forensics. If there's no law and there's no science to what you do, then you're not doing forensics. You're doing something else. And that's something you have to keep in mind. So what we do in my domain, most of the time, is we try to find ways to extract digital evidence. So for example, the latest thing that we did, which we sent in for publication, is how do you extract evidence from smartwatches? What is the process of taking a smartwatch and extracting evidence from the smartwatch? Who can, for example, tell me what evidence you think we can get from a smartwatch? Come on, let's be interactive here.
Pictures, text.
Text messages. Does anyone know what smartwatches do?
They connect to your phone.
They connect to your phone. They sync with your phone. And what sort of things can you do with a smartwatch?
Notifications on email.
Notifications from email. What else? Yes. You can answer phone calls with some models. Yes. What else? Yeah, so the number of steps you take, right? So now I know the number of steps you take. I can also know your heartbeat.
Location?
Location, especially if you're syncing up with the phone. So now think about this from an investigative perspective. If I can find a way to get all this data and I can correlate it, I can perhaps predict some of the things you're doing. If I know your heart rate was really high and your steps were going, you were moving quite a bit, then I know perhaps you were running. If I know that you were not walking and your heart rate shoots up and it's still up, then you might be doing something else. I'm not saying what it is, but it could be something else. I'll leave that open to your imagination. Especially if you are next to, I don't know, you're in Las Vegas, somewhere remote, and all of a sudden your heart rate shoots up, and we have your GPS location, and you say, oh, I didn't do that. Yeah, you did, probably. I have something that says perhaps that's what you did. So it's interesting with what you can predict to some extent with when you can augment this data, when you can correlate it. All of a sudden we have a lot of things that we can tell about you. And that's good from an investigative perspective, right? It's bad from a privacy perspective, which we'll touch on in a second. But the overall field of cyber forensics, if you can think of an umbrella, there's an umbrella called information assurance, cybersecurity, other terms, information security, digital security, e-security, so on and so forth. You have this umbrella, and under it, you have this area called incident response. How do you respond to an incident when it does, in fact, happen? And this affects multiple different areas, like law enforcement, private sector, public sector, and academia. We're all players in that domain. It's not just one entity that plays a role in this whole domain. There's multiple different entities that play a role in this domain, and it's something for you to consider. So, one of the things that we are doing right now is we're running a needs analysis survey, and we have about 91 responses so far. And so that we can start understanding this field. So this domain is not old. It really started coming about 10, 15 years ago. And I think I was one of the first people from my university, from Purdue, where I was at, to actually finish a PhD and really focus in that area. And this was not too long ago. I said I'm young. I wasn't lying. Well, maybe I was. So 2009, I was one of the first people to actually get a PhD and focus in that area. And one of the questions that we asked in that survey, and these results are not out, but it will be published within the next probably couple of months. We're going to send that out for publication. So one of the questions we asked is, do you believe cyber forensics is a formal science? Some people said no. Most people said yes. Then I asked, do you believe cyber forensics is an engineering discipline? Many people said yes. Some people said no. So let me ask you a question now. What's the difference between science and engineering?
Because science could be like the theory and ideology, when engineering is like the application.
That's exactly it. And in digital forensics, as much as we don't want to admit it, we're doing quite a bit of applied research, which really fits into this notion of engineering. But there are also some theories that still need to be formulated that relate to cyber forensic science that we still have not achieved. So there's still so much that we can do in this area. It's like think of it as the start of biology. And people are starting to discover all this stuff. And there was really no organized corpus of knowledge. And all of a sudden now, we're faced with the same dilemma with a new field called cyber forensics. And it continues to be that way. That's something my major advisor, Marcus Rogers, used to say at Purdue, and it still holds true to this day. And there are various different reasons why that's the case. Because of funding. That's one reason why we're not progressing as much as we should. So we asked another survey question, and we said, select up to 2 categories you believe most need an increase in funding. And which one's the highest there? Education. Because we're really not being funded enough in this area to really make it progress as fast as it should. Even though no one can argue that we need this stuff. Can anyone argue that companies are not being hacked? Can anyone say, hey, yeah, that's an argument? No. Every single day you hear of something happening. Like, how many millions of dollars were stolen from banks just a couple of days ago? The Anthem hack. What else was there? Kevin, you know all the stuff. You keep track of it.
Home Depot.
Home Depot. What else? Etc. Okay? And then we said, select 2 categories you believe most need an increase in education, training, certification opportunities. And still education was high. Not as high as state police, law enforcement. But that also goes back to funding. Because most law enforcement agencies are not funded enough to be able to handle some of these things. All right, so now we get into this dilemma. So my job and what my students do is they break stuff in lab all day. For example, Jason here, his project that he published was on the forensics of an Xbox One, because criminals can be using an Xbox One to actually conduct criminal investigations. Our findings were interesting because we didn't find as much as we wanted to, but still something we had to do. A lot of other projects we're working on, but if you think about it, by breaking things and by reverse engineering things and by understanding how they work, we're also understanding how to violate your privacy in one form or another. So there's a fine line there, right? So if I'm a bad person, I could use what I know to do bad things to you. And therefore, I should not. But my purpose inherently is to discover evidence, is not to invade your privacy. So now you get into this dilemma that people don't like. It's almost, in some ways, not 100% because I have my own views on that, similar to how there are agencies that are collecting data about you all the time. Are they violating your privacy? Yes. But might they use that for a certain situation in order to curb what something bad might happen? Yes. But that's another discussion because there are so many issues with massive data collection that we're not get into this specific talk. So that's kind of the thing. And not only do we focus on retrieving evidence, but we focus on retrieving deleted stuff, because that's kind of the key there. You delete a file from your computer, who thinks it's really deleted? Put your hand up if you think when you delete something, it's deleted. Nobody? It's not. It's not really deleted. We can get it back. We can get it back from your mobile phone. We can get it back from your smartwatch. We can get it back from your hard drive. We can get it back from your laptop. Okay? So the next time you think that you have something and you want to delete it, just keep in mind, we'll get it back. We'll find a way, because that's what we do. And the way you apply the techniques within our domain is also, they also have a context. What do I mean by that? Well, if you're looking at law enforcement, their primary objective is prosecution, right? Something bad happened, we want to take someone to court. Let's find the evidence. Military operations is not the same. Even though their major objective is let's continue our operations. Because what happens if their operations stop? What happens if the missile control systems are stopped? You're not interested to know? Think about it. What would happen? Somebody just did an attack and they stopped your missile operations and now they can control them remotely. Yep.
State of weakness.
Only a state of weakness? It's a state of chaos. All right? Think about that. Stay awake. Their secondary objective is prosecution. And the environment they work in is real time. They cannot afford to wait 10 days, which is pretty much what law enforcement has to do. And they wait for more than 10 days. I've been in different countries, spoken at different conferences, met with different police departments. And when it comes to digital forensics, computer forensics in specific, some labs are backlogged up to 5 years. 5 years. They get a case, they have to wait 5 years until they get to it. Yeah. Because think about your hard drive. Compare your hard drive to a house. If you go into a house, you have how many rooms you can look into? I don't know, are you a billionaire and you have 1,000,000 rooms? Okay, think about your dorm room or think about something small, because that's kind of what your house is compared to a hard drive. Hard drive has thousands of folders. So our job is to actually automate that process as well, which we'll touch on in a second. And then there's business and industry, and I always give this example. What happens if Amazon goes down for 2 hours? Not what happens to you, what happens to them.
Well, you're talking revenue, but you're also talking all the services that they host. So when they have their hosting services and cloud services going down, the impact goes to education, the companies, anyone that's using that service loses functionality.
Right. But if we just focus on buying a book, let's just focus on that, right? How much revenue will they lose if it goes down for 2 hours? Because how much sales do you think Amazon does within 2 hours? Probably quite a bit, right? They don't want to lose money. So again, they're similar to the military in some ways. They have to operate in real time. They cannot wait for you to take their servers offline, start investigating. They'll be like, no, we can't do that. We need to make our monies. That's important. So the traditional model, which is what we call computer forensics, is let's take the hard drive out, make a copy, make sure that we don't contaminate the original evidence, and then we work on the copy. We don't work on the original. And there are assumptions there. Was your computer off when we got there? Was your computer on? Because if your computer is on, now you have RAM, which is basically memory that's in the background. And when you turn your computer off, RAM is gone. Not really. It's still there for a little bit. And it also depends on the RAM chips that you're using. There's so many ifs and ifs and ifs and ifs. So the traditional model was get the computer off, unplug it, get the hard drive out, let's acquire the evidence, make a copy, let's start analyzing the copy. So it's a tedious process. And there's 3 A's. The 3 A's are, and all my students know them, right? You should know the 3 A's. You know the 3 A's? Forgot them? Are they there? Acquire, authenticate, analyze. You acquire the evidence, you authenticate it, make sure that nothing has changed, and you analyze it. All right. So where can we get data from? Does anyone know where the computer is in this picture?
Can't see it very well. There's a monitor, there's a printer.
So where's the computer? It's the guitar. Does anyone know what this is? That's a home-built wireless access point. This old Atari has been converted into a computer with a CD-ROM drive. This sushi is not really sushi, obviously, right? If you want to eat it, feel free to do so, but I wouldn't advise. This bathroom stool is a computer. You don't sound excited, or you don't look excited. Don't you want to sit down on the stool, work? No? Okay. I wouldn't do that, but something for you to think about. That's why we have cell phones. It's easier, right? So who was telling me, oh, you were telling me you play games while you're in the bathroom. Who does? Does anyone play games while they're in the bathroom? No? Okay. I mean like games on the, that's the kind of game I was talking about. All right. And then you have this picture. Where's the computer here? The Super Nintendo is the computer. Chips, Fitbits, phones, applications, gaming devices, smart TVs. This is a computer right here as well. It's been embedded into that small TV. Yes?
This is all stuff that's modified by some individual just to hide their...
These are examples of non-traditional devices, but this is not. This is just a Fitbit, right? This is just the chip. This is the cloud. So what's the cloud? You want to talk about what the cloud is? Now, does anyone know what the cloud is? Put your hand up if you know what the cloud is. Okay, nobody knows what the cloud is. I disagree, okay? There's so many definitions to what a cloud is. There's no defined, in fact, I ran a whole survey just to understand what people's definition of the cloud is, and that's another discussion that we can have. All right? You can get close, but you can't really get the whole picture. That's a computer. The point is you can get data from a lot of things. Not just one thing, a lot of things. All right? Think about you. Who has at least 2 or 3 electronic devices? Put your hand up. Who has 4? Only.
You
all right, let me ask that.
expect me to count them?
Really only, come on, think about this one more time. Who has 4? Put your hand up if you have 4. All right, you don't have your hand up. I'm going to ask you a question. Do you have a cell phone?
Right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you have a TV?
Yeah.
Do you have a smartwatch? Do you have, let's see, a Fitbit? Do you have, we're going to get there. Do you have any gaming device whatsoever? It doesn't matter whether you like technology or not. Do you have a car? Do you have a GPS system? Okay, there's no GPS system in your car. Do you have a sound system? Okay. We have to get one more. We have to get one more. We have to think together. Come on, help me. We have 2 so far. You have a laptop? You have a desktop? Okay, so that's 3. We have to get one more. iPod? You didn't own one before? MP3 player? USB stick? Okay, that's 4. We had to get 4. I wasn't going to stop until I got 4. All right.
You can count my dishwasher?
Yeah, sometimes if you can connect like smart dishwashers. Are they becoming smart? I don't know. Are dishwashers smart now? Does anyone have Google Glass? No? Okay, good. Because it's dead. Right now. It'll be resurrected at some point in the future. But the point is, cyber forensics has many different sub-areas. And really, if you're really interested in the domain as a student, you can actually focus on it from different perspectives. And that's something for you to keep in mind. You can do network forensics. You can do small-scale digital device forensics, which is basically mobile phones, USBs, anything that can fit into your pocket. Malware forensics. You can do email forensics, memory forensics, cloud forensics, computer forensics, text forensics, social media forensics, hashing techniques, which is basically, we'll touch on this in a second. Forensic psychology, as it applies to cyber criminology. Criminology, as it applies to the digital world. All of these things are really part of this big domain. It's not just it's not just technical. It's technical and more. All right? Because when you're investigating something, you're not just investigating the system. You're investigating the people behind the system as well. And you got to keep that in the back of your mind. You can profile people from their social media. That's possible. We can try to get a better picture of what kind of person you are. So where are we now in this domain? Well, the state of the art in acquisition, which is basically making a copy of the hard drive, it takes about 400 gigabytes take about 2.5 hours to 3 hours. 400 gigs. Who has a hard drive in here that's larger than 400 gigs? Put your hand up. Most of us. Some of you might not know because you might be asleep right now, but you shouldn't be. State-of-the-art analysis. Many labs are backlogged, 2 to 3 years, sometimes up to 5 years. State-of-the-art in malware forensic tools. Not much there. We're trying to change that. Mike is one of our students, and he's working really hard to change that. We have a toolkit that he's developed, and he continues to develop. And every day he comes to me, he's like, check out these results, Abe. I'm like, yeah, we got to get better results. Got to get better results. So he's sitting down there laughing, and he doesn't, I don't know if he likes it or he doesn't, but we'll find that out in the future. Memory forensics. How do you analyze the memory of the system? Remember when you get to the computer, the things that are on the screen, which is what's on the screen right now, sometimes there's nothing on the disk. Sometimes you need the data from the memory. It could be something as simple as a child molester sending a message to a girl on some instant messaging program, and boom. Now you know where that person is. You know where they're going. You know what the name of the girl is, or boy for that matter. Something to consider. The state of automation. Not much there. Can you automate some of these processes? You know, as computer scientists, we're lazy people. We are. Every time we see something, we're like, I can do this better because I can automate it. I can just click a button and it'll do it for me. Yes, no? Who agrees with me? Yeah, Alice is like, yeah. Okay? That's something. Laziness drives innovation, believe it or not. It can drive innovation. If you can find a way to make something easier for you, that's innovative. That's pretty much what we do all day, is we find a way to make things easier for us. But it's hard when you want to automate the digital forensics process because you can't totally remove the human element out of it. But sometimes maybe there are ways to do that. State of the art in integrating with social sciences. Not much there as well. Again, psychology, sociology, criminology, all of these disciplines have to feed into this area because we are talking about people at the end of the day, not just systems. And then we have this idea of triage. Does anyone know what triage is? Put your hand up if you've heard of the word triage. You've heard of triage? Yeah? No? Triage? 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 No? Have you ever been to the hospital and they did a quick checkup on you to see if you should be admitted? Has that ever happened to you? No? Come on, help me out here. Speak.
All you have to do is have blood running, and the triage puts you first in line. If you don't have blood running, you get last in line.
So according to Alice, just cut yourself and go to the hospital. But triage actually is a French word, and it really means sorting. And it came about, they attribute to Baron Dominique Jean Larrey, who's the chief surgeon of Napoleon's Imperial Guard. And back then, they had these wars. People would come in, and some of them might be, I don't know, shot, or their hand would be cut off. Maybe they can treat that person. Some other person might have something really bad that they can't really treat them. They know pretty much that this person is going to die. But they were treating everyone equally. Every case was given the same priority, right? So sometimes you'd be working on a case, and you pretty much know this person might die. But then you're like, yeah, by the time you get to this other person you could have helped, they're about to die as well. That's not good, right? So what they came up with is this concept called triage. Let's prioritize people as they come in the medical world. And that's sort of the thing that became popular in digital forensics. Well, what if we can examine the system on the scene to see if it's worth taking back in the first place, since we're backlogged by up to 5 years? So there's some process improvement there. And that's something that basically happened in our domain, and people started trying to develop triage tools. In fact, I partnered up with a company in the United Kingdom, and we actually built a triage tool. And it was really cool. Some people use it, some people don't, but I still think it's pretty cool. Improvement 2 is memory forensics. Again, I said the old school way of doing things is unplug the machine. Now they're like, wait, maybe there's something in memory that we should investigate. Improvement 3, file system forensics. We pretty much understand file systems, which is basically the way things are organized on a hard drive or on a storage medium. Very similar to the Dewey Decimal System and how books are stored in the library. Because in computers, you have the operating system, and then you have the file system, which is installed before the operating system. The file system is basically how things are organized on the disk. The operating system interacts with the file system to ask it for files. So when you delete a file, you're not really deleting a file. You're deleting an index to that file. If you open a book, you see an index in the book, right? This, I don't know, this topic is on this page number. If you remove that, you no longer know where that file is or where that page is in the book. That's pretty much what's happening when you delete a file. It's still there. And a lot of these tools are open source now, so many people can use them for free. Rise of research and education. More people are starting to conduct research in this domain. But to do really good research, you need more money. And if we don't have enough funding, we can't continue to do really awesome research. Improvement 5, which one of the major experts in similarity matching is actually at UNH, Dr. Frank Breitinger, who is not with us today, who is doing something else. Basically, the big idea here is we were talking about improving the process of an investigation. And I said that there could be many, many files on a computer system, right? So one of the things they devised is they created algorithms which were actually used for cryptography. They're called cryptographic hashes. You take this algorithm, this formula, and you give it a file, or you give it any data, and it spits out a signature. And if you store this signature, a good example of that would be child pornography pictures. When you're investigating child pornography pictures on a computer system, you really don't want to see the child pornography photos, right? Because that's illegal. So what you do is you have a database of all these signatures. And if you find one signature that matches that file on the system, then you know that there's actually child pornography on the system. The problem with that is if you change one bit in the file, then that signature changes. If you change one very small thing in that file, boom, that signature no longer works. And that's why we devised something called similarity matching or approximate matching. The idea now is not to find the exact same match, but to find similar matches. And that's a big improvement for us. So even though there are some improvements, there's so much more that we can do. There's so much more still to be done in this domain. And here are some challenges that exist and that will continue to exist. One's encryption. The more things become encrypted, the harder it is for us to crack that encryption, and the harder it is for us to get the data or the evidence. Lack of truly multidisciplinary initiatives. People are not working together on issues, as I explained, that relate to psychology or social sciences, that relate to cybercriminology. There's not enough of that being done. And we have to do more of that because we have to understand the human beings. We have to understand the ethical dimensions as it relates to digital forensics. The authenticity of the data. How can you prove that the data is authentic? That's an interesting question. And as things start changing, the old techniques we use will no longer become applicable. Cloud computing. Now, when you're storing data on your phone, you're not just storing it on your phone. You're storing it somewhere where you don't know where it's at. Does anyone use Dropbox here? Okay, keep your hand up if you use Dropbox. Just keep your hand up, keep your hand up. Do you know where the servers are? 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 Keep your hand up. No? Does anyone know where the Dropbox servers are? All right, so you're storing data in a place where you don't know where it's located. Interesting dilemma. And it's not only a technical issue, it's also a legal issue. Because now, if I'm investigating data that was stored in Russia, it's a completely different jurisdiction than in the United States. How do I deal with that? Remember, forensics is law plus science. If there's no law and science, then there's no forensics. Technology keeps changing. There's a lack of strong research base. There's a lack of a common body of knowledge. There's proprietary systems. There's lack of training and education. There's no golden standard for certification. There are problems with error rates. Yes?
A situation like that, where, say, something is stored in somewhere like Russia, are you able to reach out and communicate with them, or is it just done deal?
It depends. Are they willing to communicate with you?
But, like, is that usually an option? Like, will you make an attempt to reach out?
Of course.
Yeah.
You'll always try.
Yeah.
Doesn't mean it's going to work out. You know? And now with the whole Apple situation, Apple pretty much said on many levels that, you know, our devices are locked. How true that is another story, but that's pretty much what they're saying. I don't know
if you reach out to a company in Russia to get the data, they could report the data to you, or they could falsify it. How are you going to know?
That's a possibility. And then you have error rates in testing. If you actually get into the admissibility of evidence rules, one of the main things is error rates. Do you know that the method that you're extracting to actually extract the evidence is 100% proof, 90% proof, 80% proof? And how do you measure that? That's a big problem. Probably in all forensic sciences, but mostly in our field right now that we need to focus on. Lack of standards, the volume of data, the lack of open source tools in mobile forensics especially. They pretty much are non-existent. There's maybe a couple of things here and there that you could use. Lack of a unified artifact language, which we're working on. We have a grant to work on that, and we have the two folks responsible for building that are right here. You can talk to them afterwards. But we're calling it the Artifact Genome Project. What's an artifact? It's something that's left on the system or a computer or a hard drive or a mobile phone that can signify that there was an action that was taken of some sort. So it's like an evidence that's left behind. That's pretty much what it is. So you installed software and you used Google Maps. the artifacts from Google Maps that we can extrapolate is an example of an artifact, like your location, the date and time you went, where you, yeah, why are you laughing? That's your thesis. You got to do that. Process automation, machine learning. Does anyone know what machine learning is? Mike, do you know what machine learning is? What's machine learning? Trying to use machine learning stuff. Mike does machine learning every single day. He's been doing that for the past 2 months. One of the things we're doing is we're trying to develop artificial intelligence techniques where we give it an Android application and it says, this is malicious or this is benign. And you can only do that with algorithms, with machine learning. So you train the system. In the certain example that we're doing, we're creating a classifier that can classify an application as either benign or malicious. Moving from post-mortem to real time. So the whole idea of forensics has been, for quite some time, let's investigate after something happens. But what if we can find out what's happening in real time? It's an interesting question. And we're actually working on something with Zayed University, which is the university I was at in the United Arab Emirates. We have a grant where we created an agent that can go on your system, that can log everything that's happening on your computer. Do you see where I'm going with that? Yes.
Wouldn't that cause like a privacy issue?
Right. We're doing that for research purposes right now. So when we're logging the data, we get data, and then we can analyze the data, and then find behaviors that look weird. And if you find those behaviors from the data, then we can start saying, hey, there's an anomaly here. We should investigate that. And if we can do that in real time, that's really good. Okay? It doesn't mean that that agent cannot be installed on the work computer when you graduate at your company. So you're talking about privacy issues as they relate to you as a person. When you work in a company, there is no privacy. Don't expect them not to save everything that you're doing on every single computer system that's given to you, or a mobile phone, or whatever it is. So if you want to have a private life, get another phone and another laptop, and don't use your work phone and your work laptop for the same purposes as your personal life. Try not to do that. All right. Here are some projects that we have in the pipeline that we're trying to push out. We're trying to work on ways to create skeletal images. Rather than take an exact copy of the hard drive, can we actually find a way to get the important parts? That's something that we're trying to do. We're trying to create a toolkit that enables investigators to analyze Android malware right now. We're trying to create, hopefully in the future, which we haven't started enough of that, open source toolkits for doing mobile phone forensic analysis. We're trying to do, there's this thing called natural language processing, which is processing text and processing language. So you can get more things, or you can profile a person based on the words that they're using, for example, in an email. There's something called authorship attribution. By getting your emails, I can actually write an algorithm that goes through your emails and learns the way that you write as a person. And therefore, when you write something else, I can compare it to what we already know using computer programming. And then I could say, there's a 99% chance that you were the one that actually wrote this. And that is powerful in so many ways. Needs analysis surveys, and I showed you a little bit of results from our surveys. Distributed file system forensics. That's changing. Basically, right now, a file system resides on one computer, but file systems are becoming distributed amongst different computers. So now we're dealing with yet another layer of problems. So here are some more research ideas. If you're really interested in doing more things that are technical as it relates to this field, do some unusual device forensics. Take the AT&T receiver, break it apart, see if you can get data out of it. Smart TVs, smart watches, gaming devices, ISP wireless routers. One of my students was going to work on a project which somebody did something similar, where it's a robot that walks around, finds wireless networks, hacks it on its own, and then displays the password to you. could be fun. Stop smiling. That was you. Ways of finding evidence quickly. That's another thing that we need to really start doing. So perhaps we should use statistical sampling models in order to do that. So what we've accomplished over the last 1.25 years, here's some of the stuff we've been able to do. We've done Xbox One forensics, Android malware forensics toolkit. We did a process model as it relates to privacy. We have the AGP, the Android Genome Project. We created a toolkit for forensically analyzing an iPhone. We did BlackBerry Playbook forensics, not Playboy, using similarity matching on network traffic. So one of the techniques we presented, which was really authored by Frank Breitinger, who's again not here, he was the lead author on this, and he came up with a technique in order to detect files that are being sent on the network, which could be really useful in data leakage prevention. So in the Snowden case, if data was being sent over the network and you had very private data that should not have left that network, we have a technique of detecting that. Forensics 2020 triage, which is the triage tool I talked about. Banking application security quantification. Cat record, which is the agent I spoke about in terms of it collecting data on your computer. Chat-on forensics, which is a program that's used for chatting on Samsung phones. Or web private browsing forensics. So you can actually download OrWeb on your mobile phone, and what that does is that it anonymizes your network traffic. Can we get data from your phone that signifies the websites that you actually visited? And the answer is yes. Cybercrime censorship perception and bypassing controls. And this is a very social scientific study that I ran not too long ago. Cloud forensics survey, Amazon Kindle Fire HD forensics. And there's a lot more in the pipeline on what we're working on. So what's happening in terms of what's going to happen in this domain? Well, that's really a subject we can talk about for hours. But the main thing is research, innovation. I recently wrote an article on LinkedIn, which I've gotten a lot of interesting feedback from multiple different academics on. And I believe the title was, Scholarship Drives Learning, and it's not the other way around. Okay? If I sit in a classroom and I read the lecture slides in front of you, which is sort of what I did right now, okay? Are you learning anything? We can debate that. But if you actually work on a research project with me and you try to innovate and create new knowledge, where you really learn something, compare both learning. Compare both models. In order for you to learn and really learn, you have to think outside of the box. You have to conduct research. You have to. You have to teach yourself new things. You have to sit down in a lab, break things, play with things. And that's really the major case in anything that you do as it applies in your life. Even if you go out and you work in a company and you want to improve their system, you have to sit down and do research on your own. That's just the name of the game, no matter what field you're in. That's just the name of the game. So love is all you need, and false, all you need is science and art. I love art as well. Because, and I'm going to end with this, there is no good science without good art. You have to be artistic in your mindset and think outside of the box to create good science. And that's really what's going to push this field forward. And hopefully, maybe, if I inspired at least one of you today, or two of you, or three of you, to want to pursue this area, it's an open marketplace for you. You can do so much with it. Thank you for coming.
Does anybody have any questions?
Yep.
I have a question. So, when you're teaching people to do these various things to protect or learn to investigate forms of cyber battery, how do you avoid teaching students you're giving them all the tools to go out and be a Snowden, right? So how do you also teach how do you avoid accidentally training the next, category?
So can I answer your question with a question? All right. How do you avoid teaching, like let's say you're a medical doctor, right, and you're going through med school. How can you make sure that that medical doctor, when they graduate, is not going to go out and rip someone's kidney out and sell it on the black market?
Because there are all kinds of systems that prevent, in all professional training which I'm working, there are professional systems that prevent people from being able to function in any kind of coordinated way. I mean, like, yeah, you could probably teach somebody to take out a kidney.
Can I also add a piece to his answer?
Yeah.
We don't teach courses, we teach a curriculum.
But with
He's
that,
teaching an elective course, which I think is really important, and I put my students into. I'm teaching a required course, and it's a professional ethics course.
so that's another thing I wanted to say is, within the courses that I actually teach, I always remind the students that you should be doing this for the greater good, obviously. But is there a way that you can 100% say that what I'm teaching you is not going to be used in a bad way? No. And in certain courses, what I've done is I actually have the students sign a paper that say, hey, I'm learning this stuff, and especially when I used to teach the ethical hacking course, ethical hacking, and which my students ended up hacking me, and we can talk about that later. But I had them sign a paper saying you're not going to do this for anything bad. And if you do it for something bad in the future, it's not my responsibility. It's in one form or another. So, but that's a very good question. And in fact, recently, the University of Alabama is actually putting on a conference that's sponsored by NSF on professional ethics in digital forensics, because that is becoming an area that's scaring people, and it's an area of research that does not really exist at this point in time. I'm the editor-in-chief of a journal, and we've only received one paper in that domain, professional ethics in digital forensics. So there's a lot of work that needs to be done 100% as it applies to ethics. Yeah.
So pretty much like you're teaching people to be like, is it what's called like a white hat, like in that sense?
I mean, if you're looking at it from a hacking perspective, okay, I mean, digital forensics is not hacking. I mentioned that in the beginning. Digital forensics, and I showed the misconceptions and things like that. If you're teaching a penetration testing or an ethical hacking course, definitely you'd want to teach them to become white hackers. But with that said, I also saw an interesting article once. There are two paths you can take to have a really good job in the future. Okay? And it's kind of funny, but it's also true. One path is become a digital forensics examiner, become sort of a hacker, and learn ethical hacking, and have a career ahead of you, but build it up slowly over time. And the other one is be a 16-year-old kid, hack some major servers, do a lot of damage, and then the government will take you on. You'll have a decent career in the future. So it's kind of like, it's interesting to see that dichotomy, 100%. So, but I don't know if that's 100% true. I know there are cases where that has happened, obviously, but I don't know how often that will actually happen.
Yeah, and when it comes to like starting a career in like cyber forensics, so what are the steps like a person should take to get into that? Like, is it like start off with a bachelor's in computer science, or is there an undergrad like? And I know like you have like a master's in cyber forensics, right? Here, or
No. The way we're doing things within the engineering college is we understand that people need the technical knowledge. In fact, most of the government agencies are asking for specific amounts of credits in technical courses and mathematics as well as private sector right now. So they're moving in that direction where they really want people with technical degrees to be doing this stuff. Now, so what we do, at least at UNH, is you go through a computer science degree or you go through a cyber systems degree, and you complement all your technical courses, be it programming and other things, with the digital forensics courses. This is not to say that there are other courses we'd like to introduce that are not so technical into our program. But again, between those two, it's very hard to even have more courses because students are already overwhelmed with the amount of credits and amount of courses they have to take and so on and so forth. Now, it doesn't mean that a lot of people, what they do is they realize they like this, so they get into it in the master's rather than their bachelor's. So that's also a possibility. With that said, it's been my personal experience that you're almost better off, and many education folks around the world would disagree with me, because especially since there are a lot of universities that are offering digital forensics degrees right now. I would say you're better off having like a computer science bachelor's degree and then moving on and now getting, or maybe in your senior year, starting to get into digital forensics. But the key thing throughout the whole process, no matter what process or what method you take, is research. That's the key thing. You have to teach yourself things. You have to not only go outside and beyond the classroom and learn things, go to lab, build a network at home, play with it. That's really what's going to drive you towards becoming successful in order to have a good career in the future. And that's kind of been my opinion and my experience as well.
So maybe in terms of, like, from a bachelor's point of view, start off with computer science and then mold that into like forensics.
And do like what we call a focus area
Yeah.
in our program. Yes. Yes.
Apparently it was revealed recently that the NSA was putting firmware on hard drives. There's a potential that people are going to be moving away from those hard drives made by Western Digital and Seagate. Some other brands here in
What
the
I
United
heard
States.
about that is that it's affected all of them.
It's affected all of them. So, I mean, it looks like the backlash might be a change in the way that folks are buying hard drives, particularly those that are overseas. And how's that going to impact cyber forensics?
So first of all, this is just news I heard, right? So I don't know how true that news is at this point in time. This just came out, I think, yesterday or before yesterday. The interesting thing, however, is I was at a conference last year in Colorado, and there was a hacker there that illustrated something very, very similar, if not basically the same idea. So I kind of knew about that to some extent from a hacker's perspective, not from an agency installing something on a hard drive in order to monitor certain things. Now, what is that going to do to digital forensics? I don't know if it's going to do much in terms of the hard drives, because you still have a hard drive, you still are going to image it, you're still going to investigate it. What would be interesting, though, is, which I think many of us have not seen, if that firmware is really modifying data on the disk, you should be able to see that somehow with the dates and times in the file system, which I have not seen anyone find that out yet. So I don't know, again, I don't know how that thing works yet. I haven't looked at it in close enough regards, but especially if it messes up the dates and timestamps of certain files being on a disk. And as you know, from an investigative perspective, building a big picture strongly depends on the dates and times of when events occurred in any forensic science, for that matter. Then we're going to have an issue. But I have not seen that yet.
What if it's just snooping? Look-see.
That's also a possibility. Again, I personally don't know. I mean, I've heard about it. I've read the articles, but all the articles are extremely high level, and I have not seen like an implementation, or I have not seen, something really technical about this specific topic as of yet. When that comes about, we'll be able to look at it more closely. If you have seen something really technical, please let me know, because I have not. I've just seen words right now.
It's just coming out right now. So
Yeah.
we're in like day 2 right now, finding out how many hard drives have been affected. And it seemed like maybe it could be all of them. Some are saying that it's just the overseas ones, the ones going to Iran and China.
Yeah, they said it.
They said they haven't found any evidence of any American.
They did. The one thing I read was it said that it highly correlated with what was happening with Stuxnet, I believe.
Right.
So that's why they came to the conclusion that perhaps it was led by the United States. But I don't know if there's any definitive facts about that as of right now. We'll find out.
Western Digital Seagate's here that they're not putting any type of firmware on their drives, so I don't know if it's interception, they're putting the malware on, or they're putting the firmware on, actually.
Everything is possible.
If they're going to start making like homemade drives, how does that change?
You can do homebrew stuff right now, actually, to some extent. But yeah, I don't know. Again, as I said in my lecture, like, I don't know. We have to figure it out. Like, I don't have the answers to everything by no means.
You know, if Western Digital says they're not putting any firmware on their drives, they could just be responding to the national security letter. They're not allowed to say.
Or they don't want to hurt their own bottom line.
They're not allowed to say.
Look what happened to Cisco after their release, right? Now nobody from China is buying Cisco, and they've had to downsize.
I think, yeah, Cisco will continue to exist for quite some time, though. They have a pretty, yeah, but I think they're okay to some extent, especially compared to other companies. So we'll see where that goes. Any other questions? No other questions? Nothing? Nope. All right. Thank you. Thank you for coming.